Support the channel by letting them know that I sent you through heading over to surfshark.deals/TomNicholas. Thanks again to Surfshark for sponsoring this bit of today's video. Now, on with the show. Earlier in this video, I suggested that the reason that Harris's How China Became So Powerful video was so worrying was because, in addition to the fact that Harris is presenting himself as a journalist, the relationship between Harris and the World Economic Forum appeared to go much deeper than the kind of relationship which underlies most of the other brand deals, ad placements and shout-outs that you're likely used to seeing on YouTube. Whilst it might seem like a bit of a digression then, I think in order to explain this fully, it's useful to give a very brief sense of how such sponsorships tend to work. Now, there are many ways in which companies work with creators on this and other social media platforms to promote usually products and services. If you want a more complete overview, I'd suggest checking out Tom Scott's video about influencers and product placement. Generally speaking, however, there are two main types of paid brand deal on YouTube. The terminology varies, but the first is what, for today's purposes, we'll call an integration. This entails a creator making a video in almost exactly the way they would if it wasn't sponsored. The only difference is that a company will pay them to, at some point, segue into a usually relatively distinct section in which they tell you about the product or services sold by that company, much like I did earlier in this video with the Surfshark spot. The creator will normally encourage you to use a discount code or follow an affiliate link, again, just like I did, which helps the company sponsoring the video to get a sense of whether it's worth them sponsoring more videos by that creator in the future. After this, the creator will then, in most cases, segue back into the main topic of their video. An integration of this kind, then, is essentially an ad break. Companies will normally be keen to advertise in videos about topics relevant to their product or service, and will often have other topics that they'll avoid. They'll also give the creator some bullet points regarding the particular features of the product or service they sell, which they'd particularly like the creator to highlight within the integration section. Outside of this, however, creative control over the wider video is entirely in the hands of the creator. Whilst there are higher level ways in which the prospect of scoring a sponsorship might encourage creators to cover certain topics and to avoid others which are more complex than we've got time to get into today, the company generally has no say in the content of the wider video. The second type of brand deal relevant to our discussion is what we'll refer to as a sponsored post. Here, a company partners with a creator to produce a video which they otherwise probably wouldn't have made at all. In most cases, this will involve a creator making a video about a product or service the company sells and presenting it in a pretty much uncompromisingly positive light. As an example of this, we might look at this video by the channel Linus Tech Tips, in which the host, Linus, tells us how all your computer backing up needs can be solved by purchasing a device by a particular company. Where an integration essentially involves the insertion of an ad break in a video, a sponsored post is basically an advert in its entirety. From beginning to end, the whole purpose of the video is to sell a particular product or service. Alongside the fact that the creator usually wouldn't have made the video at all if they hadn't been paid to, the key difference here is that the company paying for the video has significant creative control over the final product. Whilst they'll normally rely on the creator to write, film and edit the video, they might ask for a section to be taken out, or for something to be added, in order to ensure it achieves their objective of presenting their company, product or service in the best light. Now, in my experience, people are generally more amenable to integrations than they are to wholly sponsored posts. At least, I hope so, given that this video contains an integration. I know that as a medium-sized creator whose income through the automated ads on YouTube can vary wildly, integration deals can make a big difference in providing some kind of financial stability to my life. This is the same for a lot of creators, and I like to think that viewers understand this. When it comes to
a few days ago, at the point that I'm recording this video, we ended up going over the best.
Skeptical. However upfront a creator is about those sponsoring companies' involvement,
a few days ago,
it's hard to eradicate the aura of insincerity and the notion that the scales have shifted from a creator using a brand deal to better enable them to create content for their audience to using their audience to allow them to get a brand deal with a company. Given how focused we've been on the selling of products or services in this section, it might seem to not be all that relevant to the case of Johnny Harris and the World Economic Forum. But this issue of control over the content of a video, or indeed a written article or any other kind of content, only becomes more important when it comes to that which is presented as journalism. So, to return to Johnny Harris, we don't know what kind of arrangement existed between Harris and the World Economic Forum. In his brief acknowledgement of the forum's involvement in the video at the very end of how China became so powerful, Harris initially suggests that they merely provided him with the graphs which he uses to illustrate some of his points, although both graphs are freely and widely available on the internet. He later describes the video as having been produced in partnership with the forum. It's all very vague. Now, it's entirely possible that Harris's partnership with the World Economic Forum didn't involve the exchange of a single penny. Perhaps the allure of working with such a large and influential organisation was enough. Yet, I think the most important takeaway from our discussion of the differing forms of relationship between companies and influencers is not that money exchanges hands or how much, but this issue of control over the content. And this is where things get interesting. See, not only did the release of how China became so powerful coincide with the 2021 Davos Agenda meeting, but an alternative text version of the script for that video was included as part of a series of blog posts published on the World Economic Forum's website, which served as provocations for the wider event. The blog post is shorter than the video and is worded differently, but has the same structure, references the same events, draws on the same data sets, and makes all of the same points. The video, which Harris released on YouTube, is also embedded within the blog. What's particularly interesting is that here, it is not only Harris who appears as the author of the piece. In fact, he's only listed as the second.
Hi, younger me. I've come from August 6, 2024.
Oh, cool, you got the time machine to work.
It's the head of communications for the World Economic Forum's chairman's office, and who, as a side note, co-wrote the book on stakeholder capitalism by the World Economic Forum's executive chairman, Klaus Schwab, which Harris recommends at the end of how China became so powerful. Harris's video, then, was not only influenced by the talking points of the World Economic Forum, and was not only produced in partnership with them, but was seemingly co-written by one of the organisation's most senior PR executives. In the previous section, we looked at the fairly routine practice of creators on YouTube and other social media sites handing over their platforms and reputations to companies to create whole posts which present that company's products in an uncompromisingly flattering light. And there's obviously questions to be asked about the ethics of such deals. But this, to my mind, is far more worrying. Here we have an influencer who presents themselves as a journalist, shaping their work to meet the agenda of a campaigning organisation which seeks to encourage us to view the world from a certain perspective. The perspective of the largest corporations on the globe. For, to stress the point, this is not journalism. This is a piece of promotional content seemingly co-written by a PR executive, produced as part of a much larger PR campaign which wrapped around the 2021 Davos Agenda meeting. See, in our contemporary moment, many young people, assessing the scale of contemporary inequality and of the climate emergency, are asking deep questions about how they want our worlds to be run. A 2019 poll found that 70% of millennials and 64% of Gen Zers in the United States, the ideological centre of contemporary capitalism, would be somewhat likely, or extremely likely, to vote for a socialist candidate for president. The World Economic Forum are more than aware of this, and of the threat that this poses to the companies which fund their activities. Their partnership with Harris, then, is essentially an attempt to use his platform and voice